Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. So usually the MO on this channel is to break down fights, break down fighter styles, but today I'm going to take a little leap into the abyss and break down a card. We're going to look back at UFC 298. Now the pay-per-view cards, and we're in the midst of a little season of some really big ones, are very different to the humdrum Fight Night Apex cards that the UFC usually give us. There's movers and shakers from these cards, a lot of titles up for grabs, a lot of title challenger slots up for grabs. So we're going to look at our 3 points to take away from this one. 3 big standouts from this card. It was a really strong pay-per-view, I think. The top 4 fights in particular, very, very strong. So number 1, Merab Dvalishvili seems to be back in Dana White's good books. There was a weird little situation when Aljamain Sterling was the bantamweight champion. Merab was saying publicly that he wasn't going to fight him. Aljamain was staying the same, and that noticeably pissed off the big wigs at the UFC. Dana White commented on it publicly, and he really, really wasn't happy about it. He even made reference to it last week in the lead up to this fight. The win he got over Henry Cejudo at the weekend, and the fact that Aljamain Sterling is no longer the champ at 135 changes everything. When Sean O'Malley won the belt from Aljamain, Merab wasn't even mentioned as a possible title challenger in the aftermath of that one. The fact that Sean O'Malley was able to basically handpick his own opponent and not even mention Merab, a lot of it was to do with the UFC's perception of him. But things have changed over the last while. He's made a massive effort, we've seen on social media at, he's got this cool, fun personality, but he's putting it out there and letting us all see, what he's actually like as a person, and fans love that. Similar to the old man Volk skits that we saw in the run up to UFC 298. Fans gravitate towards fighters who can do that, who can make them laugh, and they're not putting on an act. It's their natural persona. We've seen Colby come out there with his faked act, and people don't really buy into that type of stuff. The Henry Cejudo cringe stuff, people don't really like it. If you're not naturally funny, you don't have the gift of the gab. It doesn't really work if you try to put it on. What Merab is doing is excellent. He's really, really having fun with it, and he's getting his name noticed. He's not having to resort to bullshit tricks like Henry tried with Coach Eric in the run up to the fight. I mean, I don't even know what that was. I don't know, face palm and a half, but Merab has done a great job of maybe changing public perception. So Dana has basically said, didn't he? I think it was at the post-fight press conference. He said that he's gonna be next in line for that title shot should Sean O'Malley get through Chito Vera. And I think most of us are agreed that that's probably the most likely outcome from that one. I don't know, hands up if you think it's not, but I think the public perception is that O'Malley's going to have too much. He's improved a lot as a fighter since their last meeting. So, yeah, it looks like Merab has put himself in position now to be next in line for that one. I mean, when we look at his UFC run, he lost his first 2 fights in the octagon back in 2017. He's gone 10-0 since. His issue now is his fighting style. 9 of those wins have been by decision, and often we've seen that type of thing go against fighters. We can see Bilal Muhammad right now being sort of edged out of the welterweight title picture, even though he's probably, meritocracy speaking, he's probably the most deserving fighter in that division for a title shot. He wasn't even offered the fight against Leon Edwards at 300. So, hopefully that doesn't go against Merab, or maybe now this new fun side that we're seeing on social media has sort of has managed to overcome that. I mean, you look at his last 4 victories: Marlon Moraes, Jose Aldo, Piotr Jan, and then Henry Cejudo. I mean, what a run that is. Massive names, elite level names, and I mean, you can beat all the guys you want in the division, but it's who you've beaten that really matters. So when you're going on a long winning run and you're taking out former champions, title contenders, that's the only way you can really put yourself in title contention yourself. So looks like he's next. Number 2, Ian Garry has some work to do to convince the fan base that he's going to win that welterweight title. Ian won a pretty close decision, we could say, closely contested decision against Jeff Neal. He fought a very tactical fight, as you would expect somebody to do against a fighter like Neal, who has knockout power and who has great wins on his resume already. Ian has now beaten 3 ranked opponents in his 7 UFC victories. He's ranked at number 6 in the welterweight division. There was some talk, particularly at the post-fight press conferences, some journalists were getting on his case maybe. I think the words used were lackluster performance. I think there was a couple of things going on with this one. We have to remember 9 weeks to the day before this fight against Jeff Neal was the day that he was supposed to face Vicente Luque. That fight fell through. Obviously, Ian Garry ended up with pneumonia. Now, he insists that he had no kind of remnants of it. That's fine. That's 9 weeks later when you're about to fight. Obviously, when you're putting in a fight camp, you kind of want a 2-month kind of clear run at something to get in shape for a fight of this magnitude. There's no way in hell that illness did not affect at least half of that camp. So for me, I think that's probably still a massive factor, no matter what Ian says, in why he maybe didn't have it in him or within him to press for a finish, press his opponent a little bit harder. He fought a little safely. He insists, I think his exact words were, what would you do if Jeff Neal was coming at you? And I can absolutely understand where he's coming from. You look at soccer teams when they go and they play abroad in the Champions League and, you know, they just keep things tight and try and nick a goal. Great. They're not going all guns blazing in some of those matches, you know. So I think it was a similar tactical approach here, but in a fighting sense. Ian Garry is very good at controlling the distance. He uses his jab very, very well. He deals well with southpaws. He deals well with pressure fighters, and he manages to find the targets with his shots. He's just very, very fast, very sharp, very technical. But again, I would just imagine that he possibly didn't have the most optimal camp in the lead up to this one. Now, where does it leave him in the rankings going forward? He's talking about a fight with Colby Covington straight away. Colby Covington is ranked one place above him in the welterweight rankings. I heard in the lead up to the Jeff Neal fight from a very reliable source that the UFC may have mentioned to Ian that fight is there next if you get through this one. So it'll be really interesting to see if that does come to fruition. There's a lot of talk from Ian anyway about bringing the UFC back to Dublin. He really wants to do that. I think if he brought Colby Covington back, that would really whet the appetite of the Irish fans. He's maybe distancing himself a little from the Irish fans. The fact that he's living over in Brazil now, he's settled over there with the family, and he's been gone out of Ireland for quite a while. So there's maybe not as much of an appetite for Ian Garry as there was when, let's say, Conor McGregor was in a very similar position in the featherweight division during his rise, 10 years ago now. So I think if he can get a fight like that Colby Covington fight, get it back to Dublin, that could really whet the appetite. It could really get us all very excited. Covington is going to sell a fight. I mean, the place will sell out because of the UFC, the 3 letters. It kind of sells the arena out on its own. But yeah, I think this one could really grab the imagination, and it's a massive fight. Colby Covington's a multiple-time title challenger, so a win over him, which I think Ian absolutely has enough about him to do, would change public opinion of him a little bit. The fan base, as we saw at the press conferences, there's a lot of booing. So the fan base, the wider fan base in general, are going to have to be convinced, by some finishes or some really dominant performances that he can be pushed forward for a title shot. And we've seen in the UFC, it's not really a meritocracy. What they will do is they will push people into title fights who they think the fans want to see in a title fight, who they think the fans would pay for. So, you've got to you don't have to necessarily get them on your side, but you got to get them to want to see you in that position. We can look at the fighters above Colby Covington there, the other options on the plate: Gilbert Burns, Shavkat Rakhmonov, Belal Muhammad. I don't think Belal Muhammad is going to get pushed into an Ian Garry fight. Kamaru Usman is still in that welterweight rankings, but we don't know exactly weight class wise what he's going to be doing going forward. And then of course Leon Edwards at the top. They're not going to throw Ian Garry straight into a title shot, particularly coming off a decision win. So 1 or 2 more impressive victories could be enough to get him there. And number 3, Ilia Topuria has the world at his feet. He's now 7-0 in the UFC. That was an insanely impressive finish this past weekend over Alex Volkanovski. I thought the discussion with the comments that Volkanovski's coach Joe Lopez made was very interesting. I'll read you Lopez's comments. He said, Alex was going through the game plan, was finding his range and starting to touch Ilia up. I was disappointed he lost, knowing that Alex has a much better skill set. We knew coming into this fight, Topuria had a puncher's chance, and he got that punch. Now, this kicked off a bit of an argument, a debate. Fans were kicking up a little bit of a fuss. Social media And MMA fans in general, we can be a quite emotional bunch, and sometimes people watch something or listen to something and they take things in black and white. It's not really, he's not saying, oh, his opponent just got lucky. What he is saying is that Topuria's best chance of winning this fight was going to be by knockout, because Volkanovski is a well-rounded fighter and probably had enough to technique him, outskill him during the fight. And he was the one that was having that little bit more success, or just shading the rounds. You could see if the rounds went on the way they were going, you could see Volkanovski coming out on top in a close decision. But what Topuria does brilliantly is he will take chances. He will put himself in range where he can be hit, but he'll do it knowing full well that he has trust in the power, particularly in that right hand. It's ridiculous. And he did just that. I mean, he got Volkanovski backed into the fence, which is what he loves to do. He loves to get fighters with their back against the fence, and once they're there, he lets go. Combinations, shots to the body, that right hook comes over the top. You can look back at his victories. He's got finishes over Damon Jackson and Jai Herbert in a very similar fashion in the UFC. And even go back to when he fought in Brave and he knocked out Steven Gonsalves. That knockout was sensational. So this is his path to victory. And you know, nothing Joe Lopez said in those comments was incorrect or inaccurate. But this is the danger when you fight a guy like this, a guy that has that one-shot knockout power. He can do it to anybody. And stylistically, coming into this fight, I thought Volk was going to have maybe a little bit too much for him. I think he is a more well-rounded fighter, but that doesn't mean anything if your chin gets clipped. I think also the fact that Volk was knocked out so recently, it's difficult to ever know, but I think that possibly played a factor in him, you know, going down so easily. I guess we'll never know. It is what it is. Let's look forward in the rankings. Let's see who else is there. Max Holloway is the next guy in the rankings behind Volk, and Max Holloway has that fight booked at lightweight, doesn't he, against Justin Gaethje? So we don't really know how soon, or if at all, if he's going to be coming back to the featherweight division. I mean, you're going to go through a few rounds with Justin Gaethje. What kind of shape are you going to be in? You could be 6 months at least before you see Max wanting to fight again. We don't even know which weight class does he want to stay at lightweight, you know. After that, you've got Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega. By the way, how the fuck is Brian Ortega still ranked so highly in the featherweight division? He hasn't had a fight since I had hair. Weird. But they're fighting this weekend. I expect Yair Rodriguez to have too much for Brian Ortega, but who knows? It's going to be a closely contested one. I think with Yair being ranked at number 3 in the division, he comes through this with an impressive victory. Both of them being Spanish speakers. They want to sell a card in Mexico or in Spain. I mean, that just writes itself, doesn't it? So, I mean, it's there for him, you know. After that, in the division, you've got Movsar Evloev, who, of course, just got that split decision victory over, it was Arnold Allen. Personally, I thought Allen did enough to win that round. Dana White's comments about Evloev's fighting style, he was really just wasn't enamoured with the whole performance, and the fact that he just doesn't pick up stoppages at all is a real problem. So I can't see Dana shoving him into a title shot anytime soon. So that narrows it down, really, doesn't it? I mean, outside of those guys in the rankings, you've got Arnold Allen, who's coming off the loss. You've got Josh Emmett, who Topuria just beat the brakes off very recently. And then you're kind of narrowing it down to, if Yair Rodriguez can get past Brian Ortega this weekend, it looks most likely that he's going to be the next guy at 145. Either way, all of them are going to have their hands full. Whoever gets that shot, Topuria is a massive test for anybody. He just has that one-shot knockout power that Conor McGregor had back in his prime, and I just can't wait to see him go again. What do you guys think? Who's coming next? Who's going to get that next featherweight title shot? Who's going to give Ilia Topuria his biggest test? It's going to be a big problem for all of the featherweight division to deal with that power. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Do me a favour, like, share, subscribe. Also this week, I got an Ilia Topuria case study, a nice technical breakdown of how he likes to win fights. I can do a deeper dive into what weapons he uses and how he gets the job done. Keep an eye out for it, and I'll see you next time.